Greetings, colleagues. I hope everyone has managed to log in.
Recording in progress.
We are now starting with our meeting, and welcome to the DSTI. I can see now that today the minister is not around. From the apologies, we welcome you, DG, and your team. And also welcome to the portfolio committee members. We are not today receiving a briefing from Program 3, the International Cooperation and Resources, on full specifics of South Africa and on full specifics of South Africa's active STI cooperation agreement, as well as Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa initiative. I will quickly go to number 2 on the agenda, apologies. Shanaz, can you give us all the apologies that are there?
Good morning, Chair, and everybody on the platform. So the apologies we received were from the Minister, who's on official business out of the country. The DDG responsible for the ICR Program 3, he's also on official business in Switzerland. The Deputy Minister made an apology. She has engagements with schools in KZN. And then from the member side, the apology we received, Chair, was from Ms. Sapu, who's on oversight in Limpopo with another committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Shanaz. We are going to now proceed to have the mover for the adoption of agenda. Honorable Mazoni.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. I move for the adoption.
Thank you, Honorable Mazoni. To have a second, Honorable Nkosi.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to all honorable members and the department. I second the adoption of the agenda, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. The agenda has been duly adopted. We are going now to give the opportunity to the acting DG, Ms. Guguzwane, to give us a presentation on ICR Program 3. DG.
Morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning to the colleagues on the platform. We are here, like the chair said, to present a full spectrum of what we do under Program 3, led by DDG Dan Dutoit. So we are going to be looking at all the work that we do in terms of science diplomacy, looking at how we work with historically disadvantaged institutions to strengthen them through our bilaterals and multilaterals. We are also going to be looking at economic diplomacy, the role that we play there, and also how we are trying to impact regionally in terms of science, technology, and innovation. I am accompanied on the platform by Ms. Vinnie Pillay, together with Ms. Annelien Morgan, as well as Ms. Mampe Chaba, who are all chief directors within ICR. I would be handing over to them to then take us through the presentation, with Ms. Pillay leading, and then handing over to the other colleagues to take us through the presentation. Thank you, Chair. May I then invite Vinnie to please take us through the presentation, if she can be given the rights to share. Please, Chair. Thank you. Vinnie, I'm not sure whether you're trying to speak. Your mic is on and your video, but there's nothing that we see here.
Good morning, Acting DG.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, honorable members. I was just sharing the presentation. I hope this is visible to everyone.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. If I may proceed. So we are quite honored to be here today to present to the committee the work that international cooperation and resources does. We cover a broad spectrum of activities and regions. So our presentation will focus on some of our bilateral cooperation, multilateral cooperation, the work we do in Africa, but also then looking at some of our international resources and partnerships work. Generally, the work that we look and undertake across the spectrum is around funding collaborative research and innovation programs. When we work with our international partners, we want to be able to link with them in terms of addressing global challenges. And in doing that, we look for seed funding to prepare international partnerships. We also want to present ourselves as South Africa as an attractive investment for research and development. We also use this for mobility. So internationalization of science is very important. And this cuts as a thread throughout our international cooperation partnerships, and then technical exchanges, policy dialogues. We're also a member of many multilateral platforms. And in these platforms, we present our voice and our opinions in terms of global South positions and also the position in Africa. And we also look at events. Science Forum South Africa is one of the big national events, but also working with international partners. As Acting DG indicated, we want our science engagements to have impact. We also want it to link to transformative action locally in terms of our national system of innovation. And this is also done through our various promotions of mobility of our researchers, of our scientists. South Africa also works closely with the region. So it's very important for us to work with international partners in strengthening the region, SADC, but also broadly in Africa, working with the AU, etc. Our policy paper and our decadal plan highlights the synergies between trade and STI. And that's also increasingly looking at the interface between science and economic diplomacy. DIRCO provides support to the DSTI. As the DSTI does not have many international offices, we rely on our DIRCO missions to advise us, to also take some of our science and technology activities to our international partners, to foster some of these strategic relationships, but also we are an active partner for DIRCO When DIRCO hosts joint committee meetings with their counterparts, the science and technology portfolio is a very important portfolio, but it also serves in many of the bilaterals as flagship initiatives. And I think that's quite important, the role that science, technology, and innovation gets in the international platform with our partners. We want to attract international investment. So, for example, we're working through the cluster system with our colleagues in Brand SA, etc., to profile science, technology, and innovation, but also using our meetings to do that, whether it's in the bilateral or multilateral platforms, and of course to leverage science diplomacy as an instrument for policy. There is a saying we often use that science knows no borders. And I think that is very important from the perspective of sharing our experience and expertise. South Africa is geographically situated to attract international research, whether it's around quiet skies and astronomy, whether it's around climate change and the southern oceans. We are a unique science system, and we can leverage this with international partners. We also work very closely with the African Union and SADC, and how we then serve as a voice and serve as leadership within these platforms is also quite important. And all the work that we do also contributes to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. One of the core tenets of our decadal plan and policy is that science does not sit in the purview of just the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation. It is a cross-cutting enabler, and that also means that we need to work closer with our sister departments for a few reasons. The one is science, technology, and innovation also helps in the implementation of their specific areas and agenda, and working collaboratively, we can have greater impact from the perspective of resources. Our partnerships still focus on Africa Agenda, South-South cooperation, and BRICS. The geopolitics of the world today also means that we need to be creative in looking at partnerships and enhancing partnerships in the global south. We also have strong partnerships in the global north, including in the EU. Multilateralism for us is important, and we are very active in these areas. In terms of using our science, technology, and innovation cooperation to advance our national priorities in terms of historically disadvantaged institutions and individuals, but also including gender, race, and youth is an important tenet. So when we work with our partners, we also look at these critical elements in terms of how we want to support some of the activities we also fund in the partnership. Science communication is important. It's becoming key, also linked with science advice and the role that science plays in economic development. I am Honorable Chair, if you allow me to hand over to my colleague, Ms. Annelien Morgan, for the next part of this presentation. Ms. Annelien will present on the bilateral cooperation work with the focus on agreements in most agreements outside Africa. So that's the Americas and Asia. Thank you. Annelien.
Thank you, Vani. Good morning, Chair and the Portfolio Committee, honorable members, and good morning to the acting DG. Through the acting DG, I will then take the committee through the next set of slides. I am Annelien Morgan, the Chief Director responsible for overseas bilateral cooperation. Thank you. So as my colleague explained, Ms. Pillay, The bilateral cooperation is facilitated through various instruments that we use. Obviously, one of the key instruments when we start engaging with partner countries is that we discuss mutual areas of interest, and we then enter into what we call various legal instruments. So those legal instruments could be memorandums of understanding, agreements. So mainly we've got agreements and MOUs with different countries, which I will share now in the next slides, that facilitates the cooperation between the two countries. Once we have these agreements, we then have also exchanges between the two countries through technical visits. So we could undertake a technical visit to a particular country. They also come to our country, and we visit each other's national systems of innovation. So visiting various science agencies, research institutions, universities, projects, etc. And we look at areas of common interest, as my colleague Ms. Pillay said, where we could collaborate on research, but also attract investment in our various priority areas, and also focus on issues of skills development, technology transfer, and innovation. Just go to the next slide. Vinny, I'm not controlling the slides, so if you could please assist. The next slide. So we also, besides the bilateral relations, which I manage under my portfolio with the team, we also manage the BRICS engagement. So I'm also responsible for the BRICS engagements in science, technology, and innovation, and other multilateral engagements, such as, for example, the engaging with the ASEAN region. The ASEAN region engagements are mainly led by DIRCO. We don't have a particular program directly for now, because through DIRCO, we are still exploring a formal relationship with the ASEAN region as a multilateral bloc with Asia. With BRICS, as we all familiar, South Africa is a member of BRICS, now the BRICS Plus. So we participate in various activities, which I will share in the BRICS slide. Next slide, please, Ms. Pillay. So I will start with the cooperation with China. China has, we've focused on China with a single slide because China is one of our biggest countries that we collaborate in, biggest in terms of activities, in terms of areas that are quite active. So we collaborate in various areas, as I said. We do have a science and technology agreement with China, which was signed some years ago. And the areas that we collaborate in, obviously, one of the big projects is a square kilometer array. China is a member of the SKA. As we all aware, SKA now has a intergovernmental organization where countries have signed up as members of the intergovernmental organization, and China is one of them, together with South Africa as a founding member. We collaborate in areas of space science, renewable energy, hydrogen economy, AI, poverty alleviation, and pharmaceuticals. So various areas that we collaborate in, just to highlight. We do have a joint research program with China as part of our collaboration. And this joint research program is coordinated by the National Research Foundation. The National Research Foundation coordinates all our international instruments for joint funding. So they manage it on behalf of the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation. So the way the joint program works is that we put co-funding. So South Africa would put an X amount of money, and China would put an equal amount of money, and competitive calls are posted in the respective countries. So far, we support joint projects annually, and over the years, we've supported over 100 joint research projects since 2009, when we started the joint research program. We've recently just awarded a new round of projects this year. About 15 projects have been awarded a month ago, and we'll be launching the new call for 2025 in July, June-July, mid-year. We will be launching the new call, and the projects will be selected for funding by 2027. Another program we have with China is on human capital development. So we have a program called Young Scientist Exchange Program, also managed by the National Research Foundation. And through the Young Scientist Exchange Program, we also launch a competitive call. We've just launched the call, which will close at the end of this month, 31st of March. And how this program works is that we launch a call on South African side, China would launch a call on their side, and we invite young scientists up to the age of, I think it's 45, if I'm not mistaken. I can check the age number. And then once they get selected competitively, the South African scientists will go to China for a period of up to 12 months. And similarly, we will receive young scientists from China who come to South Africa for the same period of about 6 to 12 months. So it's basically exchanging of scientists between the two countries where they go and further their research work in that country through this program. We also have through the Belt and Road program with China, which is coordinated under the FOCAC, which is a Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, a program called Joint Research Labs and Joint Research Centers. In 2018, we've established a joint research lab with in the area of minerals research, for example, and this is led by Mintech, the agency responsible for minerals research and innovation, together with University of Limpopo and other partners and with their Chinese counterparts. And joint research is done through this joint research lab. A number of these joint research labs and centers are awarded under the Belt and Road framework, and this is funded largely on the Chinese side, but collaborative research then takes place between the two countries. We are also in the process, an expression there's been an expression of interest between the two countries to also establish a joint research center on artificial intelligence, and there's also one that's going to be established between the two space agencies on space science and research. So this is under the Joint Research Centers and Joint Labs program, and this is largely coordinated at university level, at research institution level, where they would write to the department asking for letters of support because they've applied through the calls that were posted on the Chinese side. So it's mainly a program driven on the Chinese side, which we then participate through our universities and research agencies. And then we have a number of pilot projects under the cooperation with China. One such pilot project, there's a memorandum of understanding on poverty alleviation. So this is poverty alleviation with a focus on science, technology, and innovation, how science, technology, and innovation can be used to alleviate poverty in a number of areas, be it in the area of food security, agriculture, etc. So this MOU was signed in 2023 during the margins of the BRICS ministerial meeting when South Africa was the chair of BRICS. Minister Zimande signed the MOU with his counterpart, and we are currently facilitating the implementation of this MOU with our counterparts, where we will be receiving a delegation later this year from China coming to South Africa to identify some areas where we can have some pilot projects in some of the rural areas in South Africa around issues of agriculture, poverty alleviation, etc. So using technologies and innovations. And then through the cooperation, we also facilitate a various number of exchange visits. As I said, these are through workshops, policy dialogues, technical exchanges, seminars in various areas that we agree on with our counterparts. For example, such seminars were in the past in traditional medicines, paleontology, transport technology, etc. And we have this throughout the year where we agree with our counterparts, really about sharing knowledge, policy exchange, and exchanges in the various areas. There's also an interest under the Belt and Road Forum to collaborate on areas of science parks and science innovations. As we know, China has moved quite fast and ahead in this area of science parks and innovation parks. So it's also an area which we are discussing to see how we can have joint science parks and innovation parks between the two countries. Next slide, please, Ms. Pillay. Thank you. As I mentioned, we collaborate also on areas of science exhibitions. They participate in our annual science forum every year. They have a stand. And recently, when the minister traveled to China with the president last year, in September 2024, 2 new MOUs were signed, one in navigation satellite systems called the Beidou Navigation Satellite System, and the second MOU that was signed was in the promotion of public understanding of science and technology. So these MOUs, they are non-binding in terms of their legality, but it's rather to facilitate mutual cooperation between the two countries in these areas. We last week received a delegation from China that were in Pretoria, from the China Academy of Sciences and the China Association of Sciences, where we were discussing the implementation of the MOU on the public understanding of science and technology. So collaboration in the area of science centers. In China, they call it science museums. In South Africa, we call it science centers. So we discussed how we can collaborate in the area of science promotion, sharing of experiences, sharing of knowledge. They shared how in China they've got science caravans that they've deployed throughout the country in deep rural areas of China, where they have these caravans to promote a public understanding of science. So these are some of the areas we discussed. For example, in South Africa, we've got, we learned last week that we've got about 50 science centers in the country, but compared to China, they've got over 500 to 1,000 science centers in China. So it's an area we saw that we could learn from each other in how to promote STI. Another area where we collaborate quite well with China is under G20. As you know, they're a member of G20 and also a member of BRICS. Next slide, Ms. Pillay. This is just some picture where at the SANSA space operations in Hartbeespoort, where SANSA signed an MOU with their counterpart, the China Airspace Agency, and they've erected a 12-meter antenna, satellite antenna at the Hartbeespoort, and this was last year in December between the two countries. And then I'll move now to the United States of America. As we know, honorable members, that currently with the current geopolitical environment between South Africa and the US that has signed an executive order to end all funding to South Africa, aid funding and other types of funding that South Africa was receiving. So with the US, we do also have a science and technology agreement, which has been quite active over the years. And we've got also joint research calls with them through the NRF, also coordinated through the National Research Foundation. We've got scholarship programs, etc. But as we all know, that the biggest cooperation that we have with the US is in the area of health research. And as we can see that the health vaccine cooperation, which is supporting a number of areas through the National Institute of Health of the US, which provides funding, has provided funding to South Africa through the MRC, the Medical Research Council, which falls under the Department of Health, funding PEPFAR, and also the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which is PEPFAR, but also clinical trials research, which MRC has a number of projects that they are implementing as part of the US cooperation. You can see that the average funding per annum that was received from the National Institute of Health of the US was about $135 million that was awarded to these various projects. We also collaborate with the US in the area of space sciences. As we are familiar, that NASA signed an agreement with SANSA last year, and SANSA is busy erecting infrastructure in Matjiesfontein in the Northern Cape, where they will also be hosting one of the satellites for NASA for deep space observation. And this is one area we are monitoring quite closely, especially with the current geopolitical environment of the US, and see how the project is moving forward. There was also a joint telescope that was launched at SALT in Sutherland early this year, in February, between South Africa, Japan, and the US, and that telescope for astronomy was launched at SALT. So that's also a recent program that we implemented with the USA, and obviously they are a big partner of the SKA and also part of the Square Kilometer Ray partner countries. We also collaborate with the US in a number of other areas such as energy, energy storage, R&D, There was some work and projects supported through the CSR, especially supporting some work with Eskom around issues of load shedding, and there's some funding that was received through the USAID about 2 years ago in supporting that work with the CSR. We also facilitate the partnership with the US through the annual our joint committee meeting. We were due to host the joint committee meeting in next month, actually in April, but we then received communication from the embassy that the joint committee is now on hold. And as we know, that is because of the current geopolitical tensions between South Africa and the United States. Other areas that we've collaborated with the US is in the area of the promotion of women in science, especially with historically Black universities in the US, together with our HDIs in South Africa. And this program was a program that was facilitated between the two countries. And last year, we also had a visit to Atlanta through the Atlanta Pambili Initiative, where South African delegation visited Atlanta to facilitate cooperation in various areas. And we received a reciprocal visit from a delegation from Atlanta, actually in December of 2024. We hosted them together with DERCO, DTIC, Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, Small Business. DSTI was one of the hosting departments, and we discussed various number of areas. But as we know, with the current situation now, this initiative is also on hold, the Atlanta Pambili Initiative. Next slide, Ms. Pillay. So I'll go straight to Canada because I've spoken to the US. So this is in the regions of Americas and Asia countries. With Canada, we have got a very good relationship. We've just renewed our Memorandum of Understanding in STI in November of last year, where we held our joint committee meeting in Ottawa. And we facilitate science policy exchanges. We also partner with Canada in SKA. They are also a member of SKA, and we collaborate in areas of astronomy. And there's a number of programs that Canada also supports with under their development funding under the IDRC, such as the Science Granting Council's initiative, coordinated by the National Research Foundation, which involves other African countries. And a new program was launched also last year called the Innovation System Strengthening Program, also supporting South Africa, but together with other countries in Africa. So we've got quite good relations with Canada. With Cuba, our main areas of focus with Cuba has been in the area of pharmaceuticals, health research, vaccine development, to explore collaboration in those areas. There's been exchange visits between the two countries over the years. And now we are in the process of renewing our STI agreement. The minister plans to travel to Cuba in April to sign the new agreement on science, technology and cooperation, and also to develop a new program of action with Cuba. With Brazil, we also have an existing science and technology agreement. We are also in discussion to renew that agreement. And this formed part of the Binational Commission, which former Minister Pando led last year to Brazil, where under science and technology, it was agreed that the agreement should be renewed. And we need to advance our focus on space sciences under the cooperation, and also under areas of agri-tech startups, and also focus largely on innovation and health. As you know, Brazil just handed over the G20 chair to South Africa. So we've got a very strong bilateral with Brazil, and have had a smooth handover in terms of the G20 leadership to South Africa. And we've worked well with them, and we're also working well with them in the Troika. And as I said, a new agreement will be signed with them early this year. With Argentina, we do have a bilateral agreement, but the relations with Argentina has been dormant meaning that it's less active. We've not had much cooperation over the years, but we do have an existing agreement. So there is plans to revive the partnership since we identify common areas in the areas such as marine science, nanotechnology, and bioeconomy. With India, we've got a strong partnership with India. We do have an agreement with India, a strong partnership under also the SKA, astronomy, and most importantly under health sciences and biotech. India is very strong in the area of biotechnology. We had a delegation travel to India last year to collaborate on areas of biotech, and we are in the process of finalizing a trilateral partnership between India, South Africa, and the UK in the area of biotech, supporting agriculture and food security. And we collaborate very well with India under BRICS, and with strong partners under the BRICS partnership. Rest of the countries under Asia, we've got a partnership with South Korea. We do have an existing agreement. There are plans to hold the joint committee meeting this year. We were supposed to travel to South Korea last year, but unfortunately we had to postpone the trip. And we've agreed that we'll meet this year. And the strong area that we see as a priority area with South Korea is under hydrogen economy. There's quite a strong interest with the Koreans in that area. There was a delegation in South Africa 2 weeks ago, coordinated under the DTIC and IDC, where the DSTI participated through our hydrogen economy division, and it's one of the areas we are pursuing under the bilateral. With Japan, similarly, focus is on hydrogen economy space. They are also astronomy. They are not a member of the SKA, but they do have a strong astronomy program which we collaborate with them, and we do have joint research calls with them under the National Research Foundation, and they also support us through development cooperation through JICA, and we also have a university network that has been in existence for some time. With Japan, we've recently held our joint committee meeting in November last year, where we hosted them here in South Africa. We hosted a big delegation and again another delegation in December for the hydrogen economy, as the minister signed a memorandum of cooperation in 2023 with Japan in hydrogen economy. So we also have a office in Japan. The Department of Science and Technology has a science office in Japan, in Tokyo, under the embassy, the South African embassy, which is headed by Mr. Khalib Chepi. With Jamaica, we do have an agreement in existence, but when former Minister Pando traveled to Jamaica as part of the Binational Commission, it was also agreed that we need to renew the agreement, which needs to be aligned to the new priorities. We have had joint research calls supported between the two countries in the past, but the strong focus areas with Japan is in the areas of indigenous knowledge systems, agriculture, food security, cannabis research, etc., and other areys. Upcoming potential partnerships, new partnerships, and partnerships that we are reviving for this financial year, 2025-26, are Mexico, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Malaysia, apology for the typo, Colombia, and Indonesia. So these are some of the countries that we look at reviving in the new financial year. Under Europe, we also have a number of countries. We've not put all of the countries, but some of the countries, we are highlighting some of the countries where we have a vibrant cooperation, such as with Belgium. We are due to have a joint committee meeting in 2025. We do also have joint research calls with them under the NRF, and as honorable members know, we also have a science and technology office in Brussels, headed by Ms. Judy Mabuza at the South African Embassy. With the UK, we've got a very strong partnership with the UK, where we also fund joint research calls. We've got a number of areas of focus, and also partner with them under the SKA, a very strong partner under the SKA, and we support a number of scholarships where the UK supports South Africans through their scholarship program, and most of the instruments are coordinated by the National Research Foundation. Similarly with Switzerland, We also have joint research calls every year under the NRF scholarships. They award masters and PhDs to South Africans who go to Switzerland through their scholarship program. And our focus is now moved strongly towards innovation support programs with Switzerland, where we are having a research chair in blockchain at UCT. We have a joint research chair in blockchain hosted by UCT. And we have programs which have been funded through TIA, the Technology and Innovation Agency, supporting business development, but also supporting issues of technology. We just held our joint committee meeting with Switzerland last week, as the acting DG indicated. Our DDG is currently still in Switzerland. We've just concluded our joint committee meeting with Switzerland, where we reviewed the cooperation, but also looked at where the areas of new priority areas for cooperation. With France, similarly, we have got a very strong cooperation with France. Also, joint research projects are supported under the NRF. We've got joint research chairs. We've also got scholarships. Most importantly, France supports a lot of scholarships, for example, in the areas of satellite engineering under CPUT. Over the years, where they've supported masters and PhD programs at the Cape Peninsula University through the FSATI program. And we also have cooperation with them through development cooperation, which Ms. Pillay will talk to in her slides, where we also collaborate with France through their development cooperation programs. They're also a member of SKA, and we have strong collaborations in the area of space and agriculture. We are due to hold our joint committee later this year. It did not happen last year, so we'll have it later this year. With Italy, similarly, we've got a strong cooperation with them. We fund joint research calls with NRF scholarships, and we are currently discussing with them a potential link with the presidential PhD program, which South Africa is currently setting up through the NRF. The minister visited Italy early this year and discussed with his counterparts in Italy around the presidential PhD program. Apology. With Ireland, we've got an agreement with Ireland. Our main focus with Ireland is supporting startups. We've got a good program with Ireland through the Irish South Africa Tech Challenge. Last year, we supported 7 South African startups that traveled to Ireland as part of the startup program, and they were each awarded 10,000 euros as an investment into their businesses, startup businesses, and the program has been running for the past 3 years. We met with the Irish Embassy a couple of weeks ago, and there's strong interest to continue the program to support South African startups. We're looking at increasing the numbers from 7 to about 10 for support. And largely, this program is 100% funded by Ireland through their development funding. So they fund this program 100% from their side. And South Africa supports through TIA and the Tumulhong Center under WITS in Braamfontein. So it's one of the programs that's working very well to support the startup ecosystem in South Africa. With Germany, we've got a very strong bilateral with Germany. We also support joint research calls. We have a number of joint research chairs with Germany, centers of excellence, scholarships that are supported under DAD, and they are also a strong partner under SKA, and a number of other areas that we are collaborating in. With Norway, same thing. We've got a strong partnership with Norway. We've just renewed the joint framework for research beginning of the year, where we'll continue with the joint funding of joint programs under the NRF, with the main focus around ocean research and marine sciences. We also work with them in the area of water, and especially under the EU framework program. We also work with them, and we also support scholarships through the joint research programs. Similarly with Denmark, we also have joint research calls and scholarships under the NRF. Next slide, Ms. Pillay. With the Netherlands, same thing. We just held our joint committee meeting last year with the Netherlands here in Pretoria. It was a virtual meeting, and we collaborate with them under SKA. They are a member of SKA, Astronomy, Space Sciences. During the Science Forum last December in 2024, we celebrated 30 years of astronomy cooperation with the Netherlands, and we are funding a joint program under NRF on the water, food, energy nexus, where joint projects are supported between the two countries through competitive research joint calls. With Russia, we have relationships through the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research. We are a member of the JNIR through the ITEMBA Labs, which holds the membership, coordinated by the National Research Foundation. And this is to support our students in nuclear research, our nuclear scientists who spend time at the JNR research labs in Russia for about a period of 3 to 6 months. These are PhD and master students, and we have joint programs with them under the JNR. We historically in the past had joint research calls under the NRF, and we are currently discussing renewing the joint research calls in 2025. And we participate with them under BRICS, a partner with them under BRICS. The Czech Republic, we've just discussed the new agreement with the Czech Republic, which we are negotiating. We are waiting for finalization of the agreement. It has gone through our legal processes, and some of the areas we are looking at is hydrogen, aerospace, and technology transfer. So we are still awaiting the signature of this agreement. With Bulgaria, same thing. We hosted a delegation from Bulgaria in December last year during the Science Forum, where we had a senior officials meeting and we discussed areas of cooperation. We've also exchanged a text for an agreement, a new agreement. We do have an agreement, but we've agreed to renew the agreement. So we are waiting for the agreement to be signed between the two countries. And the areas we agreed on during our meeting in December of 2024 are in the areas of astronomy, artificial intelligence, agriculture, and biotechnology. With Finland, our cooperation is on circular economy, together with the Water Research Commission, Department of Water and Sanitation, and there's a joint committee that we have with Finland to cooperate in this area. But historically, Finland has funded mainly regional cooperation. They funded a program called Southern African Innovation Systems, Support Systems, SICE, which is a innovation support program which involves South Africa, Tanzania, Namibia, Botswana, and Zambia. And in the past, Mozambique in the first phase. South Africa joined in the second phase. And a number of programs were supported under that regional cooperation. There was also another regional cooperation with Finland, with NEPAD, Audi NEPAD, called BioFISA, where Finland supported areas of biosciences. It was a 5-year program, which has also since come to an end. So we've largely collaborated with Finland at the regional level. The regional cooperation has been quite strong with Finland rather than at a bilateral to bilateral level. But we've leveraged the bilateral level to support the regional cooperation. With Turkey, it's also a new cooperation with Turkey. We've just signed the MOU in 2022 in October, and there was a South African delegation that traveled to Turkey in 2023 to discuss the program of action, how to implement the MOU. And these are the areas that were identified: renewable energy, hydrogen and carbon capture, health technologies, research, agriculture, food, industry, defense, ICT, water management, etc. Next slide, Ms. Pillay. With the Middle East, the countries we are collaborating with or facilitating collaboration are with Iran. Iran, we do have an agreement that is in existence, and we've previously supported joint research calls between the two countries under the NRF, focusing on those areas: biotech, marine, oceanography, renewable, space sciences, biotech, nanotech. We've also participated in the Iran Innovation Exhibition last year, where we took 7 South African startups and entrepreneurs to Iran to participate in the innovation exhibition with TIA. And we are currently discussing a new MOU on innovation cooperation, specifically to focus just on innovation with Iran that's currently being negotiated. And we are just finalizing the legal processes of the MOU. With the United Arab Emirates, we've got an agreement that is in existence, but the UAE has proposed a new MOU focusing specifically on artificial intelligence with the Ministry of Artificial Intelligence, and we are looking at signing it in 2025. There's also been a number of visits. The minister traveled to UAE last year and early this year in February, where he met with his counterpart, but also participated in February of this year in the Global Governments Summit, together with other departments in South Africa, where Minister participated in. With the UAE, we are still establishing the collaboration, and we don't have joint programs currently that we are funding, but we're looking at this once the MOU is finalized and have a program of cooperation with Saudi Arabia. With Saudi Arabia, we also have this is a new agreement we are discussing with them, and we don't have cooperation in the past. We have just been collaborating with the agency. Saudi Arabia does not have a Ministry of Science and Technology nor a department, but they rather facilitate their science activities in the country through an agency called the King Abdulaziz City on Science and Technology, which is under the King's office. So those are the agency we are collaborating on. And one of the areas they're looking at collaborating with South Africa, these are proposed areas, is in the area of startup support, cancer research, nuclear medicine cooperation. So these are the proposed areas. Minister met with his counterpart last year when he participated in a UNESCO conference on artificial intelligence, and he discussed during the margins of that conference last year with his counterpart in Saudi Arabia these areas of cooperation. So we are still facilitating this new partnership with Oman. The same thing. We've had several exchanges between Oman. We do have an agreement that was signed in 2008. We are also looking at renewing the MOU. The Oman colleagues have reached out to South Africa wanting to revive the relationship between the two countries, and we've had several exchanges. I now move to BRICS, honorable members. We also are responsible for coordinating our participation in BRICS, the science and technology segment of BRICS rather. So it gets coordinated under our division. So as you know, BRICS is expanding. We now have, besides the 5 original members, we have Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia. Saudi Arabia is still not yet a full member of BRICS. They did express interest, but they've not yet being rectified as a full member. So that we will probably highlight in red. But Indonesia now is a full member as of last year, when Russia held the summit, the BRICS summit. So as you know, when South Africa was the chair of BRICS in 2023, our chairmanship was held under the theme of BRICS and Africa Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development, and Inclusive Multilateralism. Also informed the choice of the theme of the 11th BRICS STI ministerial meeting, which focused on BRICS and Africa enabling inclusive sustainable development in a changing world through knowledge partnership. So South Africa saw it not only as a BRICS, as being the chair of BRICS for South Africa, but also saw it as being inclusive to Africa. Under our chairmanship, these are the legacy projects that we led under our BRICS chairmanship. And those were establishment of a BRICS network for science, technology, and innovation policy advice. This is something where we are continuing to lead on. And then also establishment of a working group on natural medicines, which we are still facilitating. So focusing on IKS, mainly in the area of natural medicines. As we know, Russia just handed over the chairmanship to Brazil. Brazil now is the chair of BRICS. And their proposed themes for BRICS for 2025 will be focusing on artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, and innovation and industry. So those are the proposed themes that BRICS will be, Brazil will be leading. So just a quick snapshot of the BRICS architecture for science and technology. So this is what we call the architecture for science and technology under BRICS framework. So we do have a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in the field of STI, which was signed in March 2015 in Brasilia, Brazil. And this MOU set up to set up these programs, what we call the BRICS STI framework program. In terms of the architecture of the science sector, we have the BRICS STI ministers that meet annually. The senior officials meet annually also. And then we've got 13 thematic working groups in various areas that meet throughout the year to discuss various areas in those thematic groups. And then they present their recommendations to the senior officials, which will then presented to the ministers. We also, whoever's the chair, like Brazil is the chair currently, they will convene throughout the year as a build up to the ministers and senior officials meeting, what we call the BRICS Steering Committee meetings. These are virtual committee meetings, and they happen every month. So once a month we meet as a steering committee to discuss the calendar of meetings for the year, but also the programs that will be implemented under that country's chairmanship, and also follow through on previous recommendations that have been taken, but also prepare largely for the senior officials and the ministers meeting in terms of what declarations will be adopted. We also have, as part of the BRICS program, the Young Scientist Forum and the BRICS Young Innovators Prize. This was adopted as part of the MOU that was signed in 2015. Is that annually, whoever is the chair of BRICS will convene young people from the BRICS countries, invite them to what we call the BRICS Young Scientist Forum. This also is comparatively announced, where a call is issued and the young scientists have to apply. Same with the young innovators, they apply based on the themes that chair will host. Last year, we traveled to Russia, since Russia was the chair. So we supported 12 South African young scientists coming on from various universities in South Africa. We ensured that it's inclusive of HDIs and also in terms of gender. So we supported 12 young scientists. We paid for their travel. They went to Russia and participated in the forum. We also supported 5 young innovators. These are SMEs which were supported through TIA, and they also traveled to Russia last year. So the same thing will happen this year when Brazil submits which themes they are going to be focusing on for the young innovators. For the young innovators, they get a prize. So the first prize gets about $10,000 US, which the chair, whoever the chair is of BRICS, will award that prize. And so the prize last year in Russia went to a Brazilian innovator. So unfortunately, South Africa, we did not win. This year, we will prepare again our young scientists and our young innovators to travel to Brazil to participate in the forum and in the innovation prize. We also have other programs such as Foresight and STI Policy Committee, and also the BRICS Science Academies do meet to share some knowledge exchanges, etc. I also want to mention, honorable members, that in February early this year, India, through their chairmanship, when they were the chair of BRICS, they led the setting up of what we call the BRICS Startup Forum and Network. So they officially launched it a month ago virtually. It was launched virtually. So we now have a BRICS Startup Forum and a knowledge hub for startups. I thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Ms. Pillay. Yeah, I think I did mention we can skip that. So maybe just to mention in terms of the BRICS STI funding program. So we do also support joint projects between the BRICS countries where the countries put funding, but the funding doesn't cross borders. It's important to mention that the calls are launched at the same time in the countries, but the countries fund the projects locally together with the counterparts from the various countries. So the idea is that the countries have to collaborate. So we need about two countries that form consortium and submit a joint proposal. That's a minimum of 2 countries that form a consortium to submit a joint proposal. So we funded through the BRICS STI framework program. We have funded over 150 research projects over the past calls, and the funding agencies came first from the 5 countries, which is Brazil, South Africa, Russia, India, and China. And these are the funding agencies that participated in South Africa. We also had the Water Research Commission providing funding because they focused on water research. They funded those calls. We had NRF that was managing the calls on our side, and then obviously the department. So we are still seeing now with the new members that have joined BRICS, if they will also join the funding agencies program to fund joint projects. I thank you, honorable members. Thank you, Ms. Pillay.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I will now hand over to Ms. Mampe Chaba. Ms. Mampe is the Chief Director for Multilateral Cooperation in Africa, and she will speak to our collaboration on the continent and region, but also our engagements on several of our multilateral platforms, including the UN. Ms. Chaba.
Thank you very much, Vinnie, and good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Portfolio Committee members. I will speak on the Multilateral Cooperation in Africa portfolio. Vinnie, if you can go back to the previous slide, which starts with African Union. Yeah, I will change gears a little bit from the presentation that was just given by Ms. Morgan. Perhaps starting by prefacing that our engagements in Africa are guided by our Africa engagement strategy, which focuses on science diplomacy engagements in Africa. Just like Europe, China, and the US have a strategy of how to engage in Africa, it's important that as South Africa, we also have a strategy. Our strategy focuses on two pillars. The first pillar being a pro-development pillar. How do we work with African countries to collectively ensure that we develop? The second pillar is a pro-competitiveness pillar, which also ensures that we compete across the region so that we still remain the best when it comes to STI in Africa. So I will start with the AU. I must also indicate committee members that I think our funding and our actions in supporting engagements in Africa do not yet match our aspirations. We're still underfunding engagements in Africa and not yet supporting engagements in the continent fully. Our engagements in the African Union really are to strengthen the African Union as a commission and supporting the STI Directorate in the African Union to run a number of STI-related engagements. The chair members will remember that as far as 2002, when former President Thabo Mbeki chaired the African Union, we launched what is called the New Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD. And under STI, 5 NEPAD flagships were established: the African Institute of Mathematics, the African Laser Center, Southern African Water Centers of Excellence, SANWACHI, and SANBIO, Southern African Network of Biosciences. I'll just give an example of how we have fared in supporting the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences. We currently have 5 centers in Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, Rwanda, and South Africa. And we have collectively graduated 3,200 alumni in mathematics, in master's and PhD mathematical courses. South Africa alone has contributed a third of that 3,200, producing just over 1,000 graduates. The AIM South Africa, based in Meisenberg, is funded by DHET and the DSI, and has done extremely well in sourcing funding from private sector such as Google Africa, such as various banks in South Africa and Canada. So it is almost independent of South Africa's funding because it has been able to attract this level of funding. All graduates from the AIM Center have been gainfully employed. They are absorbed by private industry through the partnership that AIMS has with industry. They've also newly established an AI for Science master's stream, which started in 2023. I think the only challenge when it comes to supporting the NEPAD flagship initiatives is that they can continue to administer or admit more African researchers, African students. but because of the capacity in these centers to take on more, they are unable to expand. So the biggest challenge in supporting the NEPAD flagships is funding. The big second priority area under the African Union is supporting guiding policies such as the STI strategy for Africa. South Africa served as a committee member in developing STISA 2014 and now, STISA 2024, back then in 2014, and now STISA 2034, which is a 10-year implementation plan on STI in Africa. I must also indicate that we led a number of engagements under African Union, including the establishment of what we call OR Tambo research chairs. We have 10 in the continent. We also support initiatives that support young girls in acquiring coding and robotics training courses, in supporting young innovators on an annual basis. We have a boot camp for innovators in the continent in partnership with UNECA. And we also now in the process of establishing what is called an African platform for science advisors, aimed at ensuring that the quality of science advisors that support ministers of science in the continent is high, and they are able to caucus and discuss topical issues of science, so that when they engage in various multilateral fora, they are capacitated. I will go. Sorry, the last point in this slide speaks to the EU-Africa engagement. So we are working very closely with the African Union to attract other funding partners, such as the EU. We are also working with other strategic partnerships in Africa, such as the Africa-China Forum on Africa-China Cooperation, Africa-Turkey, Africa-India, Africa-Russia, so that we expand the partnerships that we have in the continent. Under SADC, South Africa continues to play a leadership role. We chaired SADC in 2018, and since then we have supported a number of SADC strategies, such as the SADC Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan, RISDP, and the SADC Industrialization Strategy, and the SADC STI Protocol. We currently lead 10 initiatives in SADC, where we support both financial and expertise support. Just to list the few of the 10, we support the research and innovation management capacity across the region. We support high-performance computing centers across 10 African countries, where infrastructure has been deployed to those centers to perform high-performance computing experiments. We also support what is called innovation partnerships, previously co-funded with Finland, but now fully funded by 5 African countries in Southern Africa. We support a number of studies. We fully funded the engineering needs and numbers study, which talks to the needs in Southern Africa in terms of engineering. We've also supported the research paper or document on renewable energy that looks at the use of critical minerals to support renewable energy in Africa, just to name a few, but we have 10 initiatives in the region that we are leading. We do all of this supported by the 8 entities of the department, each playing a role in implementing the science policy framework for engaging the continent. Next slide, Vinnie. I indicated that we have a number of strategic partners in the continent, and the UN Economic Commission for Africa is one such partner, where really we have tangible initiatives. We're currently hosting what is called the Digital Technical Training Program for Business and Trade in Africa, where 100 ladies across rural provinces in Africa are being hosted as we speak to gain technical digital skills to support their businesses. We have worked with UNECA to host African Girls Can Code Initiatives camps, which are 2 camps per year, focusing on rural girls in South Africa. We have also partnered with UNECA to establish what is called the Alliance of Entrepreneurial Universities in Africa. This is aimed at ensuring that universities in Africa do not just perform research, but they respond to socioeconomic challenges in the communities that they serve. I will go to the next slide, Vinnie. When it comes to our bilateral engagements, we have 26 signed agreements in the continent highlighted in blue. I must indicate that the agreements, same slide, please, Vinnie, please don't move us yet. I must indicate that we have started working as far back as 2007 with signing STI agreements in Africa, where we supported policy development, we supported establishment of institutions that support STI, such as research funding institutions, such as innovation agencies. And now we are in a position where we have funded over 230 projects with the countries that have co-funded funding research in Africa to the tune of over 70 million rands. We are in the process of negotiating agreements with the countries that are highlighted in red: Gabon, Chad, Sudan, and we have not been able to pursue engagements with Rwanda and Morocco for political reasons. Just to give an example of how the engagements in Africa have evolved over the years. So originally we supported setting up of research infrastructure policies, but now we have moved into scaling up basic research to support innovation. In this regard, we work with private partners, and just an example given there is an organization called Toka Bio, the startup company that looks at animal disease detection and provides vaccines, and has supported collaborations in Angola, Botswana, Tanzania, and Zambia, where we teach farmers. So we go to the most rural communities and teach farmers how to take care of their livestock as an application of basic research, now really impacting on rural communities. We have a funding agreement with Mintech, working with Zambia, because of the minerals deposits in Zambia and the DRC, in terms of how we can beneficiate the minerals that we find in the continent. Next slide, Vinnie. We also strongly support capacity in our universities, and through a university training program funded at 2 million rands per annum, we focus on HDIs, historically disadvantaged universities that have an opportunity to spend 6 months of their research calendar in a partner institution in Africa, where we can also have students from these universities going into the continent, spending part of their research, their master's and PhD programs in universities in Africa. We've realized that our students and researchers don't fully understand the continent, and as a result are missing on a lot of opportunities. And that's why we have embarked on this university training program that sends students and researchers out into the continent. We've partnered with an organization called InnoGlobal, once again as a demonstration of how we started engaging private sector. This is based in Ireland, and we have signed letters of intent with Kenya and Ghana to support innovators and SMMEs across the SADC landscape. With Ethiopia, and we've just mentioned Ethiopia out of the 26 active bilateral engagements that we have in the continent because of time constraints. But with Ethiopia, we are working on what's called a bio and imaging technologies with their institution there to support the production of bio material based on the research that has been co-funded within the 2 countries. We also work with a number of universities in Ethiopia, Jimma University, and here we focus on minerals beneficiation, but also to support large language software systems in those countries. Next slide, Vinny. I will just switch gears a little bit and talk about our multilateral partnerships that we think we punch way above our weight. As a small country in Africa, we're very active in many multilateral partnerships. Case in point being in the G20, where the DSTI leads the G20 Research and Innovation Working Group. And we're focusing on those 3 priority areas as listed there. And the aim is to ensure that at the end of our G20 presidency, we have tangible products or programs that will allow access into innovations across the G20 landscape, that will ensure that our biodiversity resources in the G20 countries are utilized for development, but that will ensure that also issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility are monitored even beyond South Africa presidency, to ensure that both developed and developing countries, Black, white, men, women, taking part in the research enterprise are fully recognized and given equal opportunity in STI. Those are our partners or our knowledge partners in the G20 landscape. If you can go to the next slide, please, Vinny. And this is our calendar for the year, the G20 calendar for the year. With outreach activities, we have already undertaken the outreach activities at Free State University when we hosted our first RIWG in February. We engaged with young people, IK holders and scientists, and this was a first in the G20 landscape to invite marginalized communities to engage with the G20 members. We will continue to do so in May. On Africa Day, we have invited 15 African science leaders to engage with the G20 members on issues pertinent to the continent. We'll also have a session on media collaborations. In September, we have an extensive list of outreach activities as listed there. In partnership with UNESCO, we'll once again host a Women and Girls site event based on a strong call from the G20 members to have another Women and Girls and Science site event. We will also host a digital techpreneur event where winners from national innovation competitions across the G20 landscape will ascend to South Africa to showcase their work, and the final winner will be nominated there. We plan to take the G20 ministers from the RI space into Carnarvon for the SKA, to showcase our SKA infrastructure investment, but most importantly, to show how science tourism can improve the lives of citizens. And yeah, a number of excursions around the CSIR to showcase our research infrastructure will also be provided. This last slide, next slide, Winnie. Sorry, it's the second last slide. The portfolio committee members will be aware that Dr. Mjwara has been hosted to the UNESCO as an ambassador extraordinaire, supporting our engagements in UNESCO across the UNESCO landscape, not just focusing on science. So some of the areas of priority that he will be supporting us in is what is called the management of social transformations. And he will be chairing the Africa Group for 2025. We are also working very closely with UNESCO on a program called Transforming Mentalities, which looks at the mental health of young boys and men at university level. We'll continue with women and girls science activities, but also ensure that the recommendations of the ethics of AI are implemented together with the recommendations from Open Science, among others. I've just listed these few, but we have a list of priority areas that we will aim to attain by with Dr. Mjwara's role at the UNESCO. Next slide. Yeah, this is my last slide. This by no means, it's not a comprehensive list of all our multilateral engagements, but it is a list that demonstrates the breadth of the engagements that we take in the multilateral space to ensure that we support policy development in Africa. So we benchmark a lot of our policies on what's discussed internationally. We also take part in capacity building initiatives supported by organizations such as the World Bank, which supports grassroots innovations. We work very closely with the youth through funding that we've received from the UNDP. We've hosted the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotech, which support a number of research activities in the continent, but also we have specific programs that support women in biotech in not just South Africa, but the continent as a whole. We also have a dedicated program to support South African HDIs. And through the Non-Aligned Movement Center for STI, we participate free of charge, fully funded participation in all of their training programs by merely contributing $10,000 per annum. And of course, we benchmark all of our policies at the OECD, where we have enhanced membership status in the OECD Global Science Forum. Like I said, this is just a snapshot of the many engagements at the multilateral level that showcases how we punch above our weight. I'll stop here, Vinnie, in respect of the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Chaba. I will continue also again to provide a snapshot of some of our other partnerships which enhance and support some of the work already spoken to in terms of the bilaterals that Ms. Morgan spoke to, as well as some of the work in the region and on the continent. The EU portfolio is a long-standing portfolio in terms of science, technology, and innovation. And it's one of 10 globally strategic partnerships that the EU has with a specific country. It's the only agreement broadly that the EU has with an African partner country. And I think that's quite important in terms of the breadth of this partnership. It was actually one of the first agreements since democracy, when we became a democracy, to be signed between the EU and South Africa. I just want to talk a little bit about some of the areas, but not going into details. So the breadth of this partnership cuts across several areas, looking at ocean research, looking at bioeconomy, looking at global health through various programs. The EU has probably the largest research program in the world. It's a 7-year program called Horizon Europe, which started in 2021. The previous one was Horizon 2020. And that program is based on a competitive application process. So the South African National System of Innovation, our researchers, etc., are able to access funding under Horizon Europe. And they participate in the various areas like ocean research, global health, bioeconomy, energy, etc. So that's a cluster of work that we collaborate very closely with the EU. We also collaborate in terms of mobility and development of human capabilities. Under Horizon Europe, there's also specific calls for mobility. There's a program called the Marie Curie Sklodowska program. There's also the Erasmus program, which is more linked to education and run by our colleagues at the Department of Higher Education, which we also support and advise our researchers, our universities to participate in. Development cooperation is separate from Horizon Europe. The EU has some funding for South Africa around sector budget support, and some of the areas in the current sector budget support is also support for service delivery at municipal level. So that's a very important area that's being implemented in terms of how municipalities can use innovation and technology to assist with service delivery. My colleague, Ms. Chaba, spoke briefly to the regional and continental cooperation, but our AU-EU high-level policy dialogue is one of the strategic platforms we use in terms of setting the agenda for collaboration with the EU, and that translates into specific projects and initiatives. There's very specific projects with multiple partners on the African continent, including ourselves and European partners on energy, on food security, on global health. One of the platforms we support and provide to assist our researchers in terms of accessing the funding, which is very important. And I think the important point I want to make is that South Africa is the only country within the BRICS constellation that is able to, in the original BRICS constellation, the BRICS, the original members, that was able to access funding without putting in funding from our side. And that's helped us to leverage and secure a huge amount of funding into the system. And we use this ISA-STAR platform, which is strengthening science, research and innovation between Europe and South Africa, where we engage with Ms. Judy Mabuza in the Brussels office and our counterparts in the EU to share information. So our researchers are able to work with their partners in the EU around putting together proposals to access the funding. I'm trying to get to the next slide. Sorry, my apologies. This is the participation in Horizon Europe. Just to mention that we have leveraged as a system within South Africa approximately 53 million euros that has been leveraged. Horizon Europe, the program itself is highly competitive. And what's very positive for the South African system is that South African researchers, on a competitive basis, are able to provide proposals with their European partners in various calls and have been successful. In fact, the participation level of South Africa is above the average participation of even EU member states in Horizon Europe. And generally, South Africa is in the top 5 in terms of accessing funding from Horizon Europe. One of the key points for us that we'll need to watch and engage closely with the EU going forward is, given the geopolitical environment that Europe is faced with, that globally is faced with, the funding system may also become reduced. But we work very closely in terms of some of our lobbying activities and engagements at various levels. There's a very strong governance system for our partnership with the EU. The joint committee meeting is chaired by DGs. And in fact, in November last year, we hosted the DG of Research, DG Lemaitre, in South Africa, and our acting DG, Ms. Zwane, to co-chair this joint committee meeting. And the discussions were very positive. The EU still sees South Africa as a key partner in science, technology, and innovation, but they also want to work with us in terms of their focus around greening the economy, looking at critical raw materials, looking at hydrogen energy. So there is potential to enhance that cooperation for joint benefit. And I think that was the points that were made during the joint committee meeting. And the successor program to Horizon Europe at the moment, called the Framework Program 10, is possibly also something that we have been engaging with the DG for South Africa's continued participation, which is important. We also just highlights very briefly around SKA. We invited the EU ambassadors to the SKA site also to get interest from the ambassadors and their countries to potentially collaborate on the square kilometer array going forward. All of this has culminated into the South Africa-EU Summit as input from the Science and Technology and Innovation portfolio. The summit, co-chaired by our president and the EU Council and Commission presidents, was very positive. We included text in terms of enhancing our participation, looking at science diplomacy, but also some of the new agreements we will work on. For example, the Joint Research Centre of the EU provides science and technology policy advice to the EU. There's strong collaboration between the JRC and South African entities. We also want to work with the EU on science diplomacy itself. They have a framework which they've developed for science diplomacy, but also enhancing mobility, enhancing existing work, and influencing some of the content of the calls for Africa. And I think that's important in terms of our lobbying and leveraging work in terms of getting this money into the system. We also, as the DSTI, provide co-funding for some of the bigger programs that the EU has set up under Horizon Europe. So the Global Health Program, members may have heard of the European Developing Countries Clinical Trials Partnership. So that's just the next phase of it, where we provide some co-funding, not necessarily on a one-to-one basis, but important for our leverage and linking to our key priorities in the decadal plan and our policy. Just a few words on development cooperation. I think this has also come up quite strongly earlier. Development cooperation in general, the traditional ODA, the Overseas Development Cooperation, has decreased and is decreasing. And that's for a few reasons. One of them is that South Africa's classification as an upper middle income country has resulted in some of the partners re-looking at and refocusing their funding in terms of development cooperation. But however, we still see going forward, there's a strong element of countries wanting to work in the region and on the continent. And that's something we are also working very closely with. And just some of the partners, the French South Africa Agriculture Institute program, which is also working on agriculture education, but also wants to work in the region. The EU funding, which also partially funded the gender-based violence study, which was released end of last year. We work closely with Japan, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, around hydrogen and energy. There's also a cluster of work we're doing with Germany around development cooperation, KfW. I'm not going to try and pronounce the German word, but they're a development bank, but it's not loans, it's grants linked with the GIZ, which is the German Development Agency around health and vaccine development. So there's still funding coming into the system, but we need to also strategically think about how we work with our traditional partners on development cooperation, looking at the region and the continent, and also focusing on some of the critical areas that are of interest to both sides. And I think that's something that we also picking up. In terms of the economic science diplomacy interface, we do some work around attracting or communicating South Africa as an attractive destination for RDI investments. So, for example, Minister Nzimande participated in the World Economic Forum in Davos in January, and he spoke at several segments, meeting of the jobs champion, etc. And that's important to profile us as a science technology country. A very important network that we work with is Eureka. It has 45 countries, which are EU members, European members, and global members. And one of the things we try and do is provide international support SMEs in terms of market research. So we provide funding for our SMEs to participate with partners in this network to develop market-ready products, but also market-oriented research, and that's important. And most recently, in the last 2 weeks, we've reassociated to Eureka as a member. We also use the bilateral partnerships that Ms. Morgan has spoken about to work with several partners in different constellations. So many of the bilateral partners that we work with individually, that Ms. Morgan spoke about, we also work with in a multilateral format under both the EU, but also under Eureka. And then Science Forum is about igniting conversations about science. We work very closely with our international partners. Science Forum is an annual event. It attracts about 5,000 participants. So we also use that as an element for profiling ourselves, not just in the region and continent, but globally. Honorable Chair and members, this is my last set of slides. Just a few words on the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa. When the Science Diplomacy Capital for Africa was set, it was a unique opportunity to use and leverage the resources we have in the city of Tshwane. So we have Africa's largest diplomatic community, we have governments, we have international organizations right here, and it lends itself to a really melting pot of bringing leaders together to have conversations about science, how science impacts on society, how science can be used for society, and that's the elements of science diplomacy that we do. It is an initiative of the DSTI, and it's hosted in partnership with the CSIR, supported by the city of Tshwane. It was launched in July 2022. We've had a series of activities with our partners to build relationships and cooperation and strengthen some of the partnerships we have with the embassies and the diplomatic community. We also work very closely with DIRCO in terms of embedding STI into their diplomatic training, but also harnessing some of the African input into our policy development and what's needed for the continent and region, linking to STISA. Science Diplomacy Capital also organizes several events throughout the year, but foremost along that, and the highlight is Science Diplomacy Capital, together with the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, hosts the annual Science Forum South Africa that I mentioned. This year, the Science Diplomacy Capital will also be hosting with the South African Journalist Association a conference of science journalists that will be held in Africa. So we're looking forward to that. Another example of the work that the Science Diplomacy Capital is doing is building capacity. So there's collaboration with GESTA, which is the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator, and GESTA works very closely with CERN in Geneva, and also leveraging of the ecosystem of international organizations that are in Geneva to engage in science diplomacy. When Minister Nzimande was at the World Economic Forum, he engaged with the chair of GESTA, and they are developing a global curriculum for anticipatory leadership. So basically anticipating what the changes in science, technology, and innovation would be going forward. And they've chosen 5 regions globally to work with. And South Africa, in the discussion with Minister, has agreed that South Africa will be one of the regions. So we are busy preparing this anticipatory leadership week with GESTA as an example, and we will be hosting this at the margins of the G20 ministerial. Just a quick overview of who we are, just our names. You have the details. Like we said, we have offices in Tokyo and Brussels, and our colleagues are also available to support honorable members in any of your work. Honorable Chair, perhaps just to say in conclusion and handing over to Acting DG and yourself, there's broadly the need for us to work more collaboratively in the region, because that's some of the areas where our international partners are interested in, given the geopolitics and the declining funding, but also we're doing a bit of work around non-traditional partners, so around philanthropy and foundations, to see how we can work closely with them, whether it's in partnership with governments or alone. But also in the constellations that, for example, Ms. Morgan and Ms. Chopper spoke about, whether it's around BRICS or whether it's around the EU, is building or using our bilaterals to build and strengthen partnerships in multilateral fora. And I think that will also be the focus for us going forward. With that, I would say thank you. Thank you so much. We will stop there and I'll hand over to the Acting DG and Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinnie and Tim. Just as my last input, Chair, yesterday we were presenting to the Minister in terms of our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And from this particular area, he indicated that it was quite important that we contextualize where we are globally, looking at everything that is happening, and that should be clear in our strategies going forward. Just to maybe add in what Vinnie, or support what Vinnie is saying around strengthening relationships, where we need to do that, so that we continue to be impactful, especially for South Africa and the continent. Thank you, Chair. That was a long presentation, but I'm sure the members have really journeyed with us in terms of what we do as far as this particular program is concerned. Thank you very much, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, DG and your team. The presentation was too long. Please, can you get your team to make it snappy next time? We can't go overboard with everything. But we are now going to take questions from members. And thank you so much for the presentation. It was quite insightful. I'm going to note hands for questions. I'll start with Dr. Tembakwayo, and then Rabunchadu. I only see 2 hands. And then Honorable Nkosi, Ramongaro, and then, yeah. In that order, we will start with Honorable Tembakwayo, and then, yeah, you are also noted, Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Chairperson, and I would definitely agree with you when you said that this was extremely long presentation with a lot of engagement and partnership all over the world, and so on. It's so very much confusing. But all the same, I just want to start by, at the introduction, when they did the introduction, they talked about the acting positions. I mean, this is a very important department, and it goes global. Yet at the same time, we have very important positions that are occupied in acting. Like, for an example, they introduced an acting director, including an acting deputy director general, most important executive positions that need not to be occupied in acting positions. So my question is, when is this acting position going to be permanent ones? And then what is the problem? Why we have at this department the acting positions? And point number 2, in connection with the Finland, the Finland involvement or the Finland partnership with in connection with the Water Research Commission and the Department of Water and Sanitation. I just want to find out to say from the commission, which obviously includes some research related matters, is there any findings drawn from the research, if any, that could benefit or help South Africa water and sanitation with its major problems that we recently had, and we anticipate that the problem can still persist? But citing a simple example of the Hammaskral saga that we were involved in. And then the third question is in connection. Mention was made of the US partnership. I mean, right now, we are not sure whether whatever partnerships that we had with the US will be sustainable, because we wake up in the morning and then we are all being bombarded by the news from US to say South Africa is cut on this, South Africa is cut on that. But I had here where the health, the vaccines collaboration and then so on, to say it's continuing. How sure are we that the partnership that we had pertaining to this matter will last long, or what is your take on this issue? That is my questions that I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Honorable Njadu.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. I just want to welcome the very long presentation. I think South Africa is facing the highest unemployment rate globally, with a significant portions of its skilled graduates unable to secure employment. The department allocates substantial funding towards STI collaborations, student exchange, and technology transfer agreement with foreign partners. What mechanisms are in place to ensure that these investments lead to local creation rather than mere facilitating brain drain, where students gain expertise abroad but find no structured pathway to contribute domestically? And moreover, in specialized fields require rare skills such as nanotechnology, AI, and bioengineering. What concrete policies exist to integrate returning experts into local economy? Without a clear reintegrations strategies, how does the department justify STI funding allocations so that this may not function as a formalized money, like money laundering scheme under the guise of development, with the tangible impact on South African long-term workforce sustainability? I thank you.
Honorable Nkosi. Honorable Mchunu, you are also noted. Honorable Nkosi.
Thank you, Chair. I would like just to apologize a little bit about the background. I'm in another committee, so I just requested to go outside to be part of the meeting. So there will be a little bit of a background that is unusual, but I'm sure that you are able to probably hear me. I just wanted to engage with the department with some few clarities maybe they will give. But I welcome the presentation, even though it was very long, but it was very much informative. Chair, the questions I have, the first question I have is that how will South Africa ensure that the international partnership do not lead to over-dependence on foreign funding and resources, and thus compromising local innovation capabilities? I just wanted to check that. And number two, Chair, what specific metrics will be employed to evaluate the impact of international cooperation on enhancing local research capabilities and infrastructure? Also, what I wanted maybe clarity and to understand on it's the third question, Chair, which is how will the outlined strategies for promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion be operationalized as to ensure meaningful benefits for historically disadvantaged institutions and communities? Those are the questions that I have or that I need clarity on, Chairperson. Thank you.
Honorable Ramungaro.
Thank you, Chair. I also have a few questions. Greetings to the colleagues, apologies. And I think my first question, I'll just get into it. I see, a lot of these programs have been initiated with China, and there are MOUs that have been signed, and, to further foster relations and cooperation between the two nations, which is, I feel, all good and well. But in order for us to have a thorough understanding of what was negotiated, and in order for us to play an effective oversight that, goes beyond just some kind of tick box exercise, can we please see, a copy of these MOUs and agreements signed with all other international role players, so we can satisfy ourselves with the terms and conditions and everything else that is stipulated in the agreements? And also, my second question, I think I've asked this question before, but I would like to ask it again. And I too, Dr. Thembekwayo, am very concerned with the, murky relations between the US and South Africa. How will this impact on the relations between the two countries, especially when things like, STI funding are concerned? Will or have the executive orders by Donald Trump between the two countries, especially on the health and vaccine side of things? And, I see that the report mentions PEPFAR, for example. So what get the impact of the shortfall that could possibly arise from these executive orders? And thirdly, in what ways is the department prioritizing HDIs? Has there been any quantifiable progress that you can share with us? I ask because, my concern sometimes with government departments, it's the we are going to notion, but nothing ever really materializes. So do you have a concrete plan that can be measured on the basis of its success when becoming more broad-based and inclusive is concerned? And my last question, Chair, it's about the G20. I think it's important that, this portfolio committee becomes actively involved and, to contribute in one way or another to the G20 summit. Have you thought about the role that this committee will be playing towards, not only during the summit, but also during the build-up, prior to the G20? I mean, we've always emphasized how we don't want to be backbenchers and, have, availed ourselves to assisting in the best way possible to foster these international collaborations and to assist in showcasing our diverse and very, colorful South African culture. So I feel like you need to find ways to incorporate or include us into assisting when the G20s are concerned. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Gosho.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I just want to say in passing that the colleagues from the department must be missing the previous committee where some of the members would have speeches of some 20 to 40 minutes in asking a question. It's a striking difference to be much more to the point. What I would like to know is the word scientific diplomacy has repeatedly been used, and I think it's indeed one of the highlights of the department to know that we have relations with so many different countries. I mean, it would have been terrible if the session lasted 10 minutes to describe the one country and also the other country with whom we have scientific relations, and the fact that we could really listen attentively for such a long list is a very good thing. But I think, in diplomacy, very often words are used to convey something of an attitude, but not a reality. Like cooperation doesn't always mean cooperation. It sometimes means giving, and sometimes it means receiving, and sometimes it means cooperation. And I would like to know if, just as a kind of a heuristic, if the colleagues of the department could say how many % of our relations we are mainly receiving, how many of our relations we are mainly giving, and how many or what percentage is rather equal, or to put it in another way, if all international scientific relations would end this afternoon, in how many cases would we be on the losing side? In how many cases will we start saving? And in how many cases would it be equally detrimental to both sides? I mean, I know it's impossible to give exact numbers, but just a kind of a ballpark. Thank you.
Honorable Mchunu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, and greetings to you, Chairperson, to the honorable members, and greetings to the department, and thank you for the presentation. It was long but very informative. Thank you very much for providing such an information. But also, Chair, before I get into my comments, I just want to say thank you to the department. I just noted that the four presenters from the DG to the last one were females. Thank you very much for that, and we really say we are hoping that the department is going to keep this work up of ensuring that women are given positions and leading positions, for that matter, and leading such an informative and very engaging sector of work within the Science, Technology and Innovation Department. Honorable Chairperson, in the presentation, I have these questions. The first one is, and what contingency plans are in place to address potential shifts in global funding priorities that may affect South Africa's international collaborations? The second one being, how can the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation ensure that the benefits of science diplomacy initiatives are equitably distributed among various sectors within the South African community? My other one, Honorable Chair, will be, maybe is there a DG, an investigation that can, or a program that can be investigated to link up with the poverty alleviation projects that are within this program 3, that can be done in collaboration with science students in higher education institutions, both universities and TVETs. And also, Chair, I listened to the presentation on the AU programs, and I was interested in getting more information and more engagements going forward, but it cannot be maybe today with the full details on the issues with AU on mental health of young boys. It's a very critical initiative which needs to be taken downstream to all the levels of the society, in particular in science. And Honorable Chair, on the issue of us participating through the G20, I would suggest, Honorable Chair, that the chairperson leads this program through the office of the speaker. I know that there are programs which they call them the parliamentary the P20 programs, so that we can also be part of it as the portfolio committee, working with all the other portfolio committees that can be involved. But also to say, Honorable Chairperson, I noted that the signatories, when it comes to the other the signatories, the signing of the agreements with other countries that was done way back in 2023, which means, as this department, we have a potential of responding to the current global matters, which was started way back in 2023. It's very, very important to take note of that and say to the department, can we take these things further? But also, Chair, I want to also suggest, Chair, as I'm closing, that from the work that was done, can we, with this information, because this information then says, working with other government departments like the Department of Health, the Department of Women, Youth and Disabilities, and the other departments, can we, as this portfolio committee, also initiate these joint sittings, in particular with also higher education, so that we can be able to discuss these issues, but also at the same time, the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation have these joint sittings with the other departments, joint work with other departments. Department of Health, if we have an agreement where we're talking about vaccine manufacturing, because we would like to see this being manifested, being done within the country. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mchuno, and thank you, Honorable members. DG, can we get responses quickly? Can the responses not be longer, like the presentation, please?
Okay, Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you for the questions that are coming from the honorable members. I will just address one or two and then hand over to the team, who will also briefly give responses, not a very long response from each of them. Just to maybe correct the confusion where Honorable Tambekwayo raised an issue about acting. The positions are all filled. The reason that we said acting, it's because DDG Dan is traveling. So Miss Pillay is representing him. She's acting in his role while he's traveling abroad. But all the positions the senior positions are filled, even the ones that we shared in the last slides. Those are people that are permanent. If there would be an acting position, maybe it's one or two, which we are working on in terms of filling them based on what the DPSA requires, making sure that the position is funded or it's critical to be filled. But relatively within ICR, all the relevant positions are filled, and it's operating as it should. And then, noting all the other questions, I would like to perhaps go to what Honorable Nkunu just said around the joint sittings, that we would really appreciate those opportunities. Just citing the mentalities, the one that is working on young men to have different attitudes. We started that with the Department of Higher Education during the last administration. However, we would want to keep these things happening or moving forward or even growing, being such a critical area of engagement, especially for young men of our country, because the minister started this, but then we seem, sometimes there are projects where we seem to lose momentum in terms of collaborating. Last administration, it was easier because we were a joint ministry, but we would appreciate such where if it's things of national importance, we do engage with the other committee members so that we kind of like lobby those departments to partner with us moving forward. Can I then hand over to you, Vinnie, and the team to quickly just address some of the questions, and then we can give back to Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Acting DG. Thanks, Honourable Chair and members. Apology again for the long presentation. Just very quickly to perhaps say that quite a few of the questions from honourable members touched on the US and also linked in terms of our international partnerships. There is the danger in this very unknown environment from partners like the US, that our reliance in terms of funding from international partners will decrease. But I also think it's an opportunity for us to also look internally, not just within the DSTI, to increase our budget going forward, but also in terms of our decadal plan and policy, is to work with other government departments around a coordinated budget. I think that's quite important in terms of STI being a cross-cutting element for implementation. So that's something we can look at. I also think we can look at non-traditional partners. I've mentioned philanthropy and foundations, but again, it's external, and that will impact, if those partners decrease, it will impact on our system. So the important element is building our system internally with other government departments, with our entities, which would help us. I know Ms. Morgan would come in on the details around the US, because she works very, very closely on that file. In terms of the other area I want to talk about is, I think one of the honourable members spoke about skills, and we don't want brain drain. And I think that's why President Ramaphosa has also announced the Presidential PhD Initiative, where we will work very closely with the Department of Higher Education. The National Research Foundation is already initiating some of this work, where we train PhDs in South Africa, so not necessarily just looking at international partners for training. So I think that's something we will look at. Ms. Chaba will come in on the G20 initiative. I also think working with other government departments in our policy, we have the Interministerial Committee and the STI plenary, which would also assist us in dealing with some of these issues. In terms of the impact matrix, honourable member that asked about it, I think we could do better in developing a set of indicators around what the impact has been, whether it's around students, whether it's around publications, whether it's actually filtering down to the municipalities, because in our international work, we also work with a range of partners in the local ecosystem, whether it's our entities, but also like the sector budget support, we're working with some of the municipalities to develop systems and pilot systems. So that could be also an element that we can grow at local government level in terms of the actual impact. But I will pause there and ask my colleagues to also come in specifically on the questions around the US. And then, Honourable Chair, we can always share with you the copies of the MOUs with China, and I think there was a question under G20 as well. Thank you. Ms. Morgan, Ms. Chaba.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Pillay. Thank you, Honorable Chair, through the acting DG. So I'll just respond on the USA cooperation. I think it came through in all of the honorable members who took the floor regarding the sustainability of the partnership and the recent executive orders that was signed by the US on ending funding to South Africa. So the funding in the US is managed through their agencies. The biggest agency for health research in the US, as we know, is the National Institute for Health, and they've been the ones funding the bulk of the research in health, in the health area and pharmaceuticals, and also some of it came through US aid. The PEPFAR funding, largely the bulk of the impact will be felt by the Department of Health. We've had discussions a couple of weeks ago with the National Research Foundation because they manage the DSTI instruments for funding of research. And they are currently finalizing an internal assessment on the current funding partnerships with the US. So once that's finalized, we will share with the portfolio committee. But what we've discovered from the information thus far from the NRF is that on the DST side, it will be minimal to a point that the funding is co-funded. So what probably we will need to do is to fund, if the projects are stopped immediately, because some of the projects are already ongoing, is to try and fund the shortfall of the counterpart towards the project. So most of the projects funding that the US funds is through consortium, and this is through multilateral consortiums where multiple countries get into consortium to then apply for this competitive funding through the NIH, and the National Science Foundation. But the biggest impact will definitely be on the health side, the Department of Health side, because a lot of the clinical trials work through the Medical Research Council, which falls under the Department of Health. The biggest impact will be felt there. And we had a brief session with one of the leading scientists that's leading some of the projects under the clinical research side, Professor Slim Karim. And the biggest impact will be on the clinical trials side, which obviously is on the Department of Health side with the MRC. But I think the lesson learned from the current US situation is that we need to find innovative models and instruments when collaborating with our counterparts, especially in funding research, and having other non-traditional partners part of this consortium, such as private sector and other funding partners such as philanthropy, but mostly private sector, because it's largely being government-driven, public sector-driven, and I think it's time that we kind of also engage non-traditional funding partners such as the private sector to also form part of these consortium or research collaborations to support research, especially for the benefit of the country. I'll stop there. Thanks, Ms. Pillay.
Thanks, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Chava.
Thank you very much, committee, for the questions. I will respond to some of the questions that were raised. Yeah, so on the water research infrastructure, one of the NEPAD flagship initiative titled SANWACHI, Southern African Network of Water Centers of Excellence, consists of 11 centers of excellence across the region. And they conduct research across a number of topics such as water research, water infrastructure maintenance, water resource management, and so on. And we had an inaugural water infrastructure course in Ubu, in Northern KZN, just before COVID, where engineers in the region, in the municipality attended the course, had to go on site and look at challenges regarding water research, water infrastructure maintenance. We had a similar course at the Victoria Falls 2 years ago, which was extremely successful. And in the coming financial year, we are going to increase our funding to support more municipalities that require this kind of training. So perhaps Hammanskraal could be included as one of their sites that could receive this training. On the question on the DEAI, diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusivity, from a G20 perspective, it's a priority area across all the G20 working groups, including the Research and Innovation Working Group, which is led at DSTI. And the USA has objected to including this priority, but that will not stop activities planned around this area of work. Some of the activities in this area of work under G20 include working with UNESCO to make sure that all UNESCO members have strong elements of diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusivity in the STI policies. So UNESCO will monitor these policies on a year basis, almost like a, I don't want to say name and shame, but where each country's policies will be scrutinized to look at how they are implementing the inclusivity in the STI policies. We will also under G20 have a set of a framework that we will adopt at the end of our presidency on the same topic, the inclusivity in STI policies, among others. But I think at the DSTI level, ADG, this also refers to the gender focal point that has just been appointed to ensure that when we talk about, especially women in science, that it's not just a talk shop, but through budgeting, through policies, through monitoring, through evaluation, through auditing, we ensure that we support inclusivity in the STI enterprise from research to uptake of research results. And then there's the G20 request for inclusion of the portfolio committee. I think ADG that we can readily welcome and act on. We have invited youth and IK holders at the first RIWG meeting that was hosted in Free State. And I don't see why we cannot, from here onwards, include the portfolio committee members in the May RIWG meeting, which will be at Mpumalanga University from the 25th of May, where we'll also invite 15 African countries of priority to South Africa. I think the invitations to the portfolio committee members can go out as early as next week, and to all the other build up STI-related G20 engagements. And then the last comment, perhaps, DG, is related to the UNESCO Mentalities Health Program for young boys at universities. We are in the process of transferring funds to the HSRC to implement this program across all of the HDIs, and this will be done in the coming financial year. I'll stop here for now, Chair and Vinnie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Chaba. Before I hand over to Acting DG, maybe just an additional comment around our support for HDIs from the international perspective. I think it's very important when we are able to negotiate with our partners, we in the call text also include preference and support, strong support for our HDI participation. We also, for example, in the EU portfolio, through the ISA-STEP platform, have information sessions, and we've really want to increase the participation of HDIs in Horizon Europe. In general, so we provide information sessions to researchers, to students, in terms of access, in terms of proposal writing, connecting with some of their counterpart researchers in other countries. So that's quite an important element that we will continue to promote. Acting DG, I hope we've covered everything. Over to you.
Thank you, Vinnie. Thank you, Chair. That will be all from us. Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, DG.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Chair.
Chair, are you in?
Yes, I'm in.
Yes. The acting DG has handed over back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, DG, and your team. My apologies. I thought I was unmuted. I think that will be the end of our session today. Thank you so much for your time. I will now request the DG and the team to leave the platform. We are going to now remain with members of the portfolio committee for the business of the portfolio committee. So we're going to around 2 minutes and then we'll resume
Okay,
for the
thank
portfolio
you, Chair.
committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings, honorable members. I hope it's now ourselves. We have been having these portfolio committees and we have not been dealing with the business of the portfolio committee for some time now. So, Shanaz, can you come through and take us through some of the things that we need to deal with?
Okay, Chair. Okay, so under the committee business, we have a few set of minutes that we need to consider before the end of this term. So without further ado, I have circulated the minutes. The first one, Chair, that we need to look at is the minute of the I think when we ended last year, our last meeting. So that's November the 26th, I think. I'll just put it up. Um,
Can you take us through the minutes?
Okay, I'll be there now. Okay, there's it, Gunther. Oh, Gunther sharing. So, Chair, it's that minute of the 26th November. That was our last meeting for the 2024 year. And it was a briefing we had with the NRF on the Human Capital Development Program. So just go down, Gunther. And we also adopted previous minutes. So that's the minutes of the 26th of November. Gunther, just move it up to who was present so that we can see the mover and the seconder was in the meeting. Up to the go right on top to who was present. There we go. Go. There we go. So we need somebody to move the minutes for adoption and a seconder, Chair.
Anyway, Honorable Mazoni.
Chair, I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Mazoni. Honorable Amngaro, are you seconding?
I second the adoption of the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, honorable members. The minutes have been duly adopted and seconded. And can we take the next minutes?
On to the next one, February. So it's the 11th of the February. That was our visit at Sarau and SAU offices in observatory. So Gunther, just scroll down so that we can just go down. Gunther, you can move it faster. We have circulated, so I think. And then just keep it where everybody's present who's present. So that's. There we go. Chair, I think we've got a mover.
Thank you, Shanaz. The minutes of the 11th of February. Honorable Amngaro, is it a legacy end or are you moving?
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Amngaro. Can I have a second? Any second, honorable members? Are we still here, honorable members? Can we have a second for the adoption, for the move of adoption of the minutes of 11th of February? Is everyone?
Chair, we are here, but it's difficult to second because we're not part of the meeting at the moment. But if members that were there are okay with it, I would suggest that we second the adoption.
Thank you for the kind gesture, Honorable Mchunu. Can we have members who are in the meeting seconding the minutes?
Njadu or Dr. Timbekwayo?
Honorable Njadu, Honorable Tembakwayo, can you?
Yes, I do second. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Tembakwayo. Can we move to the next?
Kunta the 18th. Okay, Chair, so this was a joint meeting with the Portfolio Committee on Tourism and with the Department of Tourism. There's a mover, Chair.
Thank you, Shanas. The minutes of the meeting, we joined meeting with tourism on the 18th of February. Honorable Mazzoni.
I move for the adoption.
Thank you, Honorable Mazzoni. Honorable Tembakwayo. Oh, Honorable Mchunu. Okay, sorry. Honorable Tembakwayo. You know, it's Honorable Tembek Mchunu and Honorable Tembakwayo, so sometimes it gets me a bit mixed up, but thank you for the seconding, Honorable Tembakwayo. Shanaz, what else do we have?
I think, Kunta, there's one more before we do that report. So the 11th of March, Chair, that was, I think it was last week, no? NIPMO, the NIPMO one, the week before last. And there are two hands, Chair. Looks like there's a mover and a seconder.
Adoption of the minutes. I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with my network here. I was trying to press. I don't know what happened to my phone.
Chair, it's been moved and looks like there's a seconder.
Chair, it's Honorable Mazzoni, I second.
Noted, second. Kunta, can you just also put that report that we did on the second quarter in the beginning? I think it's February date. Our second and third quarters report.
Shanas?
Yes.
Can you send it to me? Then I will flag it.
Okay, no, it's fine. Renee, I think Renee still wants to do maybe something on the report. Let's leave the reports for maybe next week or another occasion. Chair, if that is fine with you and the members.
Anas,
Yes, Chair?
what is the matter?
No, that is all for now.
Okay. And
And then
the report for the oversight.
the oversight report is still with editing. It's done, but it's still with editing. So I hope that maybe by next week we can consider that one.
Okay, no, it's fine. Members, we had another matter that was arising. There was an issue that was apologies. That was raised by members in the social media platforms and then on WhatsApp and on an email of the program. And I think we should handle it here now so that members are clear on what will happen and what is happening with the program that they have adopted. Shanaz, can you at least give a detailed explanation on the program?
Okay, so I think members weren't well happy in the way maybe the consultation happened with regard to how the program changed. But I think even going forward, some of the changes are inevitable when the parliamentary program changes and it affects the committee program. And in our case, even the timing didn't work in our favor to do where we had a committee meeting to consult on matters that we took out of the program. And as I have stated in the response email, even the items or the agenda items, it's not like it's lost. It gets postponed, it would get carried over to the next available dates. So even if the new program come out, you will see it is accommodated in that program. So when things happen like that on a weekly basis and there isn't a meeting in between for the consultation, our first port of consultation is with the chairperson. And normally there's like a kind of a management committee in each committee, a management committee meeting where we do it fast to say if the parliament changes program tomorrow to say there's a house sitting and we have to lose an item on the agenda, then I mean the fastest way is to speak to chair. And we are also in a we have a special group just for members on email and a special group for members on a WhatsApp platform, and we do communicate like quite regularly and extensively on there on any matter that we change. And when we communicate, there was consultation with the office of the chair on the matter. So I think maybe going forward, I said we open to suggestions from members in terms of how what other ways we can also pursue to have this done. I mean, we were on an oversight, so also during that time we didn't have a meeting, so a lot of things couldn't have been discussed in a formal meeting setting regarding some of the later changes to the program. And the two changes in questions was this week's one and next week's one, because we didn't factor in the invitation of the joint committee with the Committee on Communications that's happening next week. Hence, we had to swap around this two, because this briefing that we received this morning was supposed to happen next week. So all we did was to swap it around and bring this one forward. But I don't think members were happy with that. So yeah, Chair, I'll leave it there. And then members can just advise how they want to be consulted on that. But there had been no content change where we brought in another item to say all these items are normally scheduled, and we kind of just move it around as and when the parliamentary program change, or when members formally decide in a meeting to change or take out certain items. The item that we did take out was the one where we I explained was the matter about TIA. I think members would have seen reports on what is currently happening at TIA and the changes and so on. So to have that discussion on the innovation programs alone members would have just been natural to ask the kind of governance questions in that meeting, which would have diluted that discussion. So discussing that with Chair advised that, she also want to be formally and fully briefed on the governance issues on TIA. So she advised also that item then we move to the next term, and then we write formally to the minister that he be present to give us that account of what's happening with the TIA governance structure before we move on to, the particular programs that we wanted to brief, the grassroots, innovation program. Chair, so I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Shanaz. Honorable members, do we have a take on the issue? Honorable Tembakwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just feel we have a WhatsApp group, and if there are issues that we need to agree upon, let's use the WhatsApp group. It's easier communicated, and all of us keep on checking the WhatsApp group. So I think it will help us, especially when it comes to those decision-making of when and how and which mode do we use to have our meetings further on. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Tembakwayo. I think we will have all communications on changes sometimes where we are unable to have portfolio committee meetings at that time. We will have them communicated in the portfolio committee. We'll have the secretariat communicating in the WhatsApp groups, sometimes with emails, sometimes with WhatsApp groups. So let us engage on that level when we are not having portfolio committee meetings. But we must not we must not be far from advising where needs be, where we think that things are not done accordingly. We can advise each other, and then we correct where corrections are needed. But I think if that is clear with all members and everyone is fine with it, we can leave it at that. Thank you so much, members. Shanaz, do we still have another outstanding issue?
I just put on the decision on the international study tour so that I can get a formal directive from the meeting to say go ahead, given what was presented to us today. We saw which was the countries we had very strong relationships with, and then also a date: is it to be in this year? Is it to be June? Is it to be this September? Is it to be December? So I need that kind of directive formalized so that we have a minute to attach to our application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Shanaz. We suggest that we deal with that in the next portfolio committee meeting. We will have a discussion on that next week. After then on the business of the portfolio committee. so that you can start with preparations for us to have a fruitful journey to the country that we are going to agree upon. Shanaz?
Noted, Chair, noted. I'm just worried next week is our joint meeting with Department of, Communication and Digital Technologies. And they have invited us for a physical meeting next week in the Good Hope Chamber.
No, it's fine. We will have our session after the joint portfolio committee meeting to discuss the matter. Thank you so much, honorable members. The meeting is officially adjourned. Have a great week ahead.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.